The Bogulousa incident of 1919 revealed the brutal intersection of racial injustice and labor exploitation, igniting a crucial fight for civil rights and fair labor practices. The Bogulousa incident of 1919 stands as a poignant example of the racial and labor tensions that plagued the United States in the early 20th century. This conflict, part of the broader Red Summer of 1919, was a result of deep-seated racial animosities and a labor dispute exacerbated by the socio-economic conditions of the time. Bogulousa, Louisiana, was established in 1906 by the Great Southern Lumber Company. The town was a classic example of a company town where the company provided housing, schools, shops, and other essential services to its workers. This setup allowed the company to maintain significant control over the lives of its employees and the town's operations. The Great Southern Lumber Company, founded by Frank Henry Goodyear and Charles W. Goodyear, quickly grew to become one of the largest lumber producers in the world. Its massive mill attracted workers from various backgrounds, creating a diverse workforce. However, this diversity also laid the groundwork for significant social and racial stratification. The economic and social structure of Bogulousa was characterized by a clear racial hierarchy. Black workers were typically assigned the most dangerous and lowest-paying jobs, while white workers occupied more skilled and better compensated positions. This racial segregation was strictly enforced by both company policies and societal norms prevalent in the Jim Crow South. Because of that, the black community faced severe racial discrimination and segregation. The working conditions at the Great Southern Lumber Company mill were harsh and dangerous. The employees endured long hours, low wages, and unsafe environments. The company's primary focus on productivity and profit often came at the expense of worker safety and well-being. Wage disparities between black and white workers further exacerbated tensions. As labor conditions deteriorated, efforts to organize for better wages and working conditions gained momentum. Both black and white workers sought to improve their situations, but racial divisions often hindered unified action. Understand that there was a national movement advocating for labor rights and fair treatment of workers at the time. Unions, such as the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, UBCJA, began to play a significant role in advocating for workers' rights in Bogulousa. However, the company and local authorities vehemently opposed union activities. Union organizers faced intimidation, threats, and violence as they attempted to rally workers. World War I profoundly impacted the American economy and labor market. The need for construction materials for military purposes increased the demand for lumber. This demand placed additional pressure on the workers in Bogulousa, who were already struggling with poor working conditions and low wages. The end of World War I saw the return of black veterans who had served bravely in the military. These veterans came back with heightened expectations for civil rights and economic opportunities, having experienced a level of equality and camaraderie in the military that was absent in civilian life. They were less willing to accept the status quo of racial discrimination and economic exploitation. The returning black veterans' determination to secure their rights and improve their economic conditions contributed to rising expectations within the black community. This shift in mindset was seen as a threat by the white population, who feared losing economic and social dominance. The veterans' presence and their demands for change added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation. The summer of 1919, known as the Red Summer, was marked by a series of violent racial confrontations across the United States. A combination of economic competition, labor unrest, and the growing assertiveness of black communities fueled the racial violence. Bogulousa was not immune to these national trends, and the town's racial and labor tensions reached a boiling point. The American Legion, an organization of World War I veterans, played a significant role in Bogulousa's racial tensions. Many of its white members were hostile to black veterans and black workers who were seen as economic competitors. One such member was John Jack Williams, a white veteran who actively participated in mob violence. Williams was known for his staunch opposition to labor organizing efforts and his belief in white supremacy. The American Legion often acted as an unofficial enforcement arm of the company, intimidating and suppressing any efforts by black workers to organize. The Great Southern Lumber Company employed various tactics to control its workforce and suppress labor unrest. These included hiring private security forces, collaborating with local law enforcement, which Sheriff Simmons led, and using divide and conquer strategies to pit black and white workers against each other. By the early summer of 1919, the stage was set for a major confrontation. Black workers, emboldened by the broader national labor movement and the presence of returning war veterans, were determined to fight for better wages and working conditions. White workers, influenced by racist ideologies and fears of economic competition, were equally determined to maintain their privileged status. The company's stubbornness and willingness to use violence to suppress dissent fueled the fire. The spark that ignited the violence occurred in early July 1919. Black workers, who had been organizing for better conditions, planned a meeting to discuss their demands. The company, aware of the meeting and intent on preventing any form of labor organization, alerted local authorities and mobilized a group of armed white men to disrupt the gathering. On the night of July 5th, 1919, as the black workers gathered in a local hall, they were confronted by a mob of armed white men. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent clash. The white mob, driven by a mix of economic fear and racial hatred, attacked the black workers with guns, clubs, and other weapons. The black workers, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought back as best they could. Among them were Solomon Saul Jenkins, a black labor organizer, and Isaac Ike Jenkins, a black veteran and community leader who returned from World War I. The violence soon spread beyond the initial confrontation. News of the clash quickly circulated through the town, and more people, both black and white, joined the struggle. The confrontation spilled into the streets, with rioters attacking homes, businesses, and anyone perceived to be on the opposing side. The Great Southern Lumber Company did little to intervene, effectively condoning the violence. The violence in Bogulousa was brutal and indiscriminate. Multiple people were killed, and many more were injured. Homes and businesses were destroyed, leaving numerous families homeless and destitute. Saul Jenkins was severely beaten but survived, while Ike Jenkins sustained a gunshot wound to the leg. The aftermath of the riot left the town in a state of shock and mourning, with deep scars that would take years to heal. The severity of the violence in Bogulousa drew national attention. Civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, demanded federal intervention. Under pressure, the federal government sent investigators to assess the situation. The findings confirmed the widespread violence and the collaboration of local authorities and the company. The federal investigation, led by agents from the Department of Justice, revealed the extent of the violence and the coordinated efforts to suppress labor organizing among black workers. The investigators documented numerous instances of brutality, property destruction, and intimidation. They also highlighted the role of local authorities and the company in perpetuating the violence. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the federal investigation faced significant resistance from local officials, including Sheriff Simmons, who attempted to obstruct the inquiry and protect the perpetrators. The local investigation, however, was marred by bias and corruption. Sheriff Simmons and other local officials attempted to downplay the violence and shift the blame onto the black workers. The local investigation failed to deliver justice for the victims and further entrenched the existing racial and economic inequalities. In the aftermath of the incident, several white men, including John Williams, were arrested and charged with various crimes related to the riot. However, the local justice system, profoundly biased and influenced by the company, saw to it that most of these men were either acquitted or received minimal sentences. John Williams, despite his prominent role in the violence, was acquitted of all charges. This lack of accountability further highlighted the systemic racism and corruption in Bogulousa. Despite the immediate failure to achieve justice through the courts, the Bogulousa incident had significant long-term implications. The violence drew attention to the plight of Black workers and the need for better labor protections. Over time, this contributed to broader labor reforms and strengthened the resolve of the labor movement, particularly among Black workers. The efforts of leaders like Saul Jenkins and Ike Jenkins, who continued to advocate for workers' rights despite the violence and intimidation, laid the groundwork for future labor victories. The incident had lasting implications for labor rights in the United States. It underscored the intersection of race and labor and the importance of protecting all workers regardless of race. This contributed to the eventual success of the labor movement in securing better wages, working conditions, and legal protections for workers across the country. The efforts to organize and advocate for fair treatment in Bogulousa were part of a larger narrative of labor struggles that continues to influence labor policies today. The Bogulousa incident serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggles for racial and economic justice. The themes of economic disparity, systemic racism, and labor rights that were central to the 1919 incident continue to today. The courage of individuals like Saul Jenkins and Ike Jenkins in standing up against overwhelming odds serves as an inspiration for those who continue to advocate for social change. The Bogulousa incident is a critical, yet often overlooked chapter in American history. It highlights the intense racial and labor tensions and underscores the complexities of the fight for equality. While the immediate outcomes were tragic and unjust, the incident contributed to long-term labor and civil rights changes. It is a powerful reminder of the ongoing struggles for justice and the importance of remembering and learning from our history. The stories of the key figures involved in the incident, both Black and white, offer valuable insights into the human dimensions of this conflict and the broader societal forces at play.